Welcome to another episode of Living Justice, Living Leadership. I'm your host, Lee Fisher, Dean of Cleveland Marshall College of Law at Cleveland State University. You know, I've had the great privilege to live my life at the intersection of the public, private, nonprofit, and academic worlds. As a lawyer, CEO of 2 nonprofit organizations, and as a state legislator, attorney general, and lieutenant governor. And the lessons I've learned come down to just 2 words: justice and leadership. That's why every week we'll talk to people who are walking the walk. Some are lawyers and some are not, but all of them have something in common. They are change makers. They are guardians of justice. They are living justice, and they are living leadership. Welcome to part 2 of my interview with Steve Potash, the CEO of OverDrive. If you liked the first half, you're going to love the second half. So please stay tuned. I want to open it up to our Dean's Leadership Fellows now. And all you have to do is unmute yourself, identify yourself by name, and ask a question to Steve. No such thing as a dumb question. I know Steve is going to be open to whatever you ask him. So please, who wants to begin? I see Stephanie. Stephanie, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Stephanie Goggins. I'm a 2L. My question for our distinguished alum is, how do you view problems? How do you coach those brilliant thinkers that are on your staff? How do you get them to look at problems? That's my question. Thank you.
Well, it varies because the talent in the company goes from those that have a natural passion and eagerness to break through a barrier, to the other end of the spectrum where they're uncomfortable, stepping out of their own process and rule. Everything revolves around the talent. And we spend a lot in professional development, talent development. So if in fact we have in the leadership roles throughout the organization, so here we're about 500 employees. It's an executive team, a senior leadership team, but then we have any individual that is managing himself and at least 2 people, they're part of a leadership team. And we get together and across the company, because there's so many other things going on, and some of these problems impact so many downstream channels or users. So how do we, I'm trying to, again, precisely parse the question, Stephanie. I have my own style, but I'm always trying to encourage anyone who is dealing with the hard things is to run into the fire, the burning house. That's kind of a mantra with all my direct reports. I like happy news. I get happy news. I got all these dashboards and new records and more checkouts and new customers. I don't need to hear any of that. I want to know the bad news. I want to know what's going south. I want to know where there's a problem. And it could be reputationally, we may lose a confidence or a competitive threat. So I tell my team, I only want to really talk about where you have a challenge. I try and be, I want to help them figure out what are the barriers, what are the blockers, and let's figure out how we jump, go around, or even just change the track. I just had this incident. We have an enormous, in many of the European markets, we have these embedded competitors, and they've kind of crafted the rules, like in Sweden, where the government only, will allow ebooks and libraries under these really arcane and very unuser-friendly models. Or in Germany, where we can't get permission to transfer from competitors' platform the books into Libby. So I challenge them. Okay, sometimes you just have to accept. Let them live with that legacy experience and go win on the merits. And so it's really a case by case determination.
Thank you. Imani.
Yes. Well, first, thank you so much for sharing just your story with us. I think it's very inspirational and it resonates a lot with me. I was a journalism major at Howard University before coming to law school and worked in management consulting, specifically around helping companies leverage technology to gain profit. And so part of my theory around attending law school and returning was around this idea that there is an intersection between purpose and profit, that you don't have to be a complete non-profit and you don't have to be complete kind of, like, to use a bad, I guess, alliteration, like a money-sucking corporation, but like there's this intersection where you can do both. And so I'm curious to know a little bit more about the metrics that B Corp finds to be impactful to, I guess, just being a socially responsible corporation. And are those metrics the same as what you would share to the, I guess, clients that you would be advising as far as like social investing?
Well, it doesn't get, the process we go through to get certified and to keep our accreditation is really not as relevant as we go to the market. I will tell you the absolute best benefit we've seen that everyone has told me is recruiting and retention of our talent. We are competing, especially for engineering and IT. Right now, I think, there's, in every business, every industry, there's labor shortages. So I asked the engineers who lead the teams and the newly hired engineers, and we got a lot of, our recruiters are doing all the right things on campus and on all the job boards and all that. I said, what are the three things that resonate the most when we get a yes? Besides money, because you have to, at least be in the game. And they said, number one is mission. People want to be part of something where they feel they are changing and having an impact. So the B Corp comes into play many different ways, but it's not like I'm dealing with, let's say, a government agency. In many cases, one stack of that helps me get through a compliance question because we've been audited for that, So I know with confidence as we go into this process, and, our biggest international market is Singapore. They are extraordinarily bright, talented, focused professionals on every level. We have to go through very, significant compliance. We have to post big financial surety bonds, but it's all worth it, let me tell you. So if you saw that movie, Crazy Rich Asians, yeah, that's all real. That's no special effects in what you saw there. That's going on over there. But the certified B comes into play many ways, but it's not really the metrics of the certification process as the reputational, or in some of those stacks where we get called into play, that we have the confidence that we'll meet criteria for government work.
Okay, let's go next to Katie.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking with us. So I found your story particularly inspirational because I too am an evening student. I'm a 3LE, so getting close to the end, but not close enough. And I was wondering if you have any advice for current evening students, particularly in regard to balancing your professional life and your law school life.
Well, I told you I had an unfair advantage. At the time, I got the girlfriend. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to even use that term anymore. But my wife, Lori, gave me the ability so I could lean more into the business side because I was getting excellent note-taking and test prep work at low cost, let's just say. I would say in your situation, it depends what your day job is and what your aspirations are after being, passing, graduating, and if you're going to be admitted. I would start investing in what's next. And I'm not certain if you have aspirations with your current employment or business segment to go on and use the JD or you're being admitted as a stepping stone to something bigger with your current opportunity, or if you have a particular market segment that you are excited to. But I would say start spending time in that area. I mean, I was fortunate that I didn't know I was building OverDrive when I was trying to digitize law books, but I was spending my days learning all of the things about getting the rights from the publisher, and lots of the components that led to founding the business.
Great. Jessica.
Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for joining us. We've crossed our paths a few times when I was at Federation, but it's nice to see you in context. So I have 4 kids, ages 6 through 12, and I personally just started using OverDrive or any sort of electronic reading, I would say 1.5 years ago, because I was a reading purist. But my kids, it's so natural to them. We download their library books, from Cleveland Heights on OverDrive. They love it. And at the same time, as a parent, we worry about too much screen time for our kids, even though they are reading. So I'm just curious from your company perspective, do you engage or do you monitor kind of the studies that are around screen time as it might affect the business, and how engaged do you get as a company? Because I do know some corporate entities, engage their own research or, have their own studies done. And I'm just curious how you think about kind of the balance of the medical research on screen time and of course what you're trying to promote, which is accessibility, to quality literature and reading.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to use it to respond to that and then tell you about an even bigger, more timely challenge where we need a legal brain trust to figure out the way forward. But screen time still is not conclusive. So, I mean, you should turn off the blue light filter. You can use a dark reading mode. There's a lot of ways that you can mitigate the backlit screen impact. We love books in all form, and we believe early readers benefit from having someone read a book to them. So print books with your child, depending on the early ages, is still shown to be the most effective parenting experience of outcomes for children's love of books and reading together, reading to your infant to begin with. We are fortunate that the public library position for us, our top thing is we respect patron privacy. So I'm not going to weigh in there. Do we have the ability to possibly, if there's a student, the devices allow you as a parent to control access and minutes and, and you can have your carrots and sticks, figured that one out. In the school market, as I'm heading tomorrow morning to Salt Lake City for the first national division meeting of the American Library Association in person since 2 years. It's the American Association of School Librarians. And so these are the school librarians, educators, principals, superintendents, heads of that are from pre-K through high school. We have an app called Sora, S-O-R-A. It's free. We donate free collections to all elementary, middle, and high schools worldwide. They're loco parentis. If your child in the classroom is being provided by the state or the city or the school or the parent, the teacher, access to a device and reading, now they have a responsibility to what's on the screen, and it's a different script. So now we have a high responsibility. So yes, we have student reading dashboards. And usually the thing we're more worried about is they're not reading. So encouraging more reading. The thing that I was teasing about is I will be meeting with the executive director of the American Library Association and attorney who is the national leader out of Chicago for the Office of Intellectual Freedom. Lori and I and our team are heartbroken over the pain and suffering being inflicted on educators, school librarians, and public librarians who are being attacked for putting in books about sex education, LGBTQ+. There are laws, and I don't want to get into politics here, but the reality is they're threatening school librarians with felony charges if a group of parents want to attack a particular title that it talks about gender identity. I'm going out to meet with this ALA group because I don't want to get too much into the politics of it, but now Legal Defense Fund for school librarians and elementary school teachers who are getting their school libraries taped shut like a crime scene until this new committee outside the district wants to come in and evaluate every title, every book on that shelf. And of course, it bubbles up to me because I'm putting books on their digital shelf. This is another reason I like to talk about the good challenges of helping children succeed with literacy and academic outcomes. This is where my legal training now and our appreciation. I'm sitting in these national meetings, I'm saying, quit playing defense. You're responding every time, and it's in a variety of states. You can just, it's on critical race theory, it's on gender identity, it's on sex education. I think you may have picked up a district 30 miles of affluent community that we service outside of Dallas. There was a recording of an educator who said, if you have any books in your library on the Holocaust, you must offer materials on the other point of view. I don't want to get emotional here, but if anybody wants to join a legal defense initiative for the National Office of Intellectual Freedom, freedom to read, this is a cause I didn't really want to go there, Lee. This wasn't on my planned agenda, but I get on a plane tomorrow to go out there. And yes, I'm happy we're opening up schools and people like using our reading app, and kids, they are reading more. And we have graphic novels and comics and all that. But boy, if someone said, what keeps you up at night? And by the way, a lot of this attack is coming from very well-funded political action committees creating issues for other purposes, not just because this one book has a conversation where teenagers are talking about their identity. Something else at work.
Steve, I want to tell
I didn't
you
mean to
that
get so heavy, Jessica.
I'm actually very glad you went there, because I don't think there's any more serious issue facing this country today than what's happening right now with libraries and school boards. So I commend you for doing this. I think it's critically important. Let's go next to Kelsey. Kelsey, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here and being willing to talk about these hard questions, and the passionate side of working with kids and literacy and books. I actually wanted to ask a question related to your work as an entrepreneur. I also have a great passion for local entrepreneurial ecosystems. I worked a little bit with Jumpstart, YBI, Generator, and did some entrepreneurship work in undergrad. So you talked a little bit about how legal training was your secret weapon. Lawyers tend to be very risk averse. Entrepreneurs tend to be very aggressive risk takers. How do you reconcile those perspectives in your work?
Well, thank you for that. I always had a optimistic, outgoing, let's try things. I'm not telling you about the businesses that failed. So I think it comes down to the personality and your own risk tolerance. At the early stage, when I started the business, I had my law practice started. I did some work for the attorney generals. I had some source of revenue. That practicing law was always our plan B. It was my plan A when I graduated, got admitted, and for the year or two. But as I started to see this future where one day maybe every book could be a digital on a screen, you do have to have a safety net. I already started a young family. My wife, Lori, was a law librarian at Case Western Reserve, benefits, health insurance. So yes, I can tolerate a lot of risk, but in the early days, you have to have that plan B. And being admitted to practice already gives you a livelihood. When I also, because I wanted to experience everything, I was taking assigned cases. I was staying outside the criminal courthouse in the Justice Center. I was doing guardian ad litem for juvenile court. I have a saying, I don't have my squishy ball here. Every OverDrive employee gets. It's a bright orange sunshine with a big smile. And on the back, it has printed, it's like a stress relief ball. On the back, it says, there are no bad days in ebooks. I've been saying that because I represented juvenile moms with babies as guardian ad litem on East 22nd Street. I've been in criminal courts and in our jails. I know what a bad day is. Somebody wants to come complain to me about a digital book problem, I can smile and say, I have that perspective. So I recommend all of you, whether you get an internship or one of the law clinics, practice in one area. And the perspective it will give you also then is, even as an entrepreneur, you realize the downside isn't as bad. I used to always tell Lori when I came home, I don't think they can take the kids while we were in debt and I had creditors chasing me. I don't think they could take the kids. We'll just go back, pitch a tent somewhere. So you got to balance the risk, but I did have a safety net, which helped.
Thank you so much.
So I guess our new motto at Cleveland Marshall is going to be, there are no bad days at Cleveland Marshall. Compared to what other people are going through. Even on your worst day, it's not as bad as something that somebody else is experiencing somewhere else in the world. And that's a good point. It keeps things in perspectives. Steve, I'm going to end with a couple questions related to leadership, because you're talking today to Dean's Leadership Fellows, part of a leadership and law program. And just want to ask you, thinking about some of the challenges you've had as a leader, as a manager, what leadership lessons you can leave with us and give us some examples along with those lessons, if you would.
Well, I actually have to prepare for an interview, and they gave me all these similar questions. So I'm trying to. It's for something that's going to be published somewhere else.
So this is good practice.
Yeah.
I'll make it easier for you. How's this?
On the leadership side, I will say,
it.
I'm going to be specific on the leadership side
Sure,
because this covered entrepreneurship, technology, this other piece I was asked to. The one thing is, roll up your sleeves and do the work. There's nobody who ever questions that I'm just phoning it in. I don't care what it is. I'm interested in everything. I love to read contracts. I sit up at night and read any access I can get to pleadings, the regulatory stuff. I don't have time to read it all. Unfortunately, we have experts, but to really have the confidence of a high talented team, they will know in a heartbeat if you're just, reciting quotes out of a leadership handbook, or you really want to understand and you feel the pain. And so you have to just roll up your sleeves and do the work. There's no shortcuts sometimes. I prepare. We just had this, I said I was with an international group. I have to prepare for these meetings, and I asked them all to brief me in advance so I could come and not just, shoot from the hip. We all know and we see folks that are really great at that. But if you really want to be leading a highly successful team, they have to understand that you're in the weeds as appropriate. I don't know all the tech stack and lines of code. So that would be one thing. And then the other thing is I've always had a long-term view. I've always been relationship oriented, not transactional. And that goes with my relationships with our chief technology officer has been with OverDrive 27 years, and he still looks like a kid. That was his first job out of college. I still have continuing relationships with McGraw-Hill, John Wiley, Pearson that I started in the 80s. I would tell, and some of our most important trading partners are people that said no to me for 10 years. I said, I really am just interested to understand you, have a relationship. And if this isn't the right deal, maybe at some time I'll have a value proposition where we earn your business. So those are two tenets I think that have served me well.
I love those. We have time for one last question if anybody has one, because I know Steve's got a busy day and he's got to prepare for that trip to Salt Lake City because he doesn't do things just off the top of his head. He prepares. Steve, I want to tell you that we could not be more proud that you're an alumnus of our law school. Every time I hear you talk, even though I've known you for many years, I get inspired. There's lots of takeaways today from what you've said. Not only are there no bad days at Cleveland Marshall, but you shouldn't phone it in. You should roll up your sleeves. You should feel the pain. You should do the work. You should prepare. There are no shortcuts. Take the long-term view and focus on people, not just transactions. Those are phenomenal leadership lessons. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. And I want to thank all our Dean's Leadership Fellows for sharing this time with Steve Potash. And if you have not downloaded Libby, please do me a favor. Tonight, download Libby, and you'll better understand why Steve Potash has been such a remarkable success. Steve, any last words?
Well, I want to also give credit to the co-founder, Lori Potash, the best student I ever knew. She served as president of the Ohio Law Library Association. She's now on the board of the Cleveland Law and the Cuyahoga County Law Library. So she's on the committee where the administrative judges, she's back to her roots. And number two, I want to thank you, Dean Fisher. Cleveland Marshall is enjoying a tremendous energy because of your leadership, and I recognize and appreciate that. And also for Kelly, who's helped created some of the framework for these programs. So you couldn't be at a better place to have a launching pad for your legal future, your career, or whatever you aspire to do. Thank you for your interest today. I appreciate it.
Steve, thanks again. We'll be watching the continued success of OverDrive, and have a safe and productive trip to Salt Lake City. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks again, Steve.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.